So neon, it's called neon because it means new, and it was very recently discovered in history. So that's why they just call it, oh, this is a new one, so neon. And basically there's very little of neon on planet Earth, and when they discover it and they managed to take it from the atmosphere, they managed to realize that it was not very useful, let's say, but it reacted very easy with other elements, and that's why it shines when it's touched by other elements. So that's why we see neon in every frame today. So neon, what actually does is to have the atomic number 10. So it means that it wraps like two hands. You wrap a circle, yeah. So with 10 protons, you close the circle and you start a new one. So neon is telling us we begin a new cycle. So what is the 11th element? So the 11th is sodium, and we cannot just go through it like nothing, because it's one of the most important for us, for everything. So sodium is an element that comes from an Arabic word. I think it's sawat, something like this, which means soda. How do you say in English soda caustica? There's a specific word for that. Like the one that creates like the bubbly and cleans the
Sodium carbonate.
Carbonate.
Carbonate?
Bicarbonate.
No, I think there's another name for that. No, it's not.
Baking powder.
Yeah, baking
soda?
Baking soda. Yeah, that one, baking powder. So, baking soda is something.
Yeah, baking soda.
Well, there's a difference when you're baking between baking powder and baking soda.
Yeah,
There is a difference.
yeah. Well, so basically it's like the mix of ashes and some liquids and water and stuff. So they create something that cleans surface and stuff. So that's the origin of the name soda. So sodium in Latin refers to that. So, but if you look into the chemical elements, you will see that sodium is actually written Na. So actually Na, which is the chemical element, the name of the chemical element, is an Egyptian name that is nectar. And then the Latin people started to call it natrium. And natrium became the way in which you name sodium, salt. So the word niter means divine, and it's a way in which the Egyptians used to call the gods. So the god of the sun, the divinity of the sun, was Nitiru Ra. So Nitiru Ra is the divinity of the sun, and because every divinity is for eternity, so when a human wanted to become eternal, what you do was to bury the body in salt, which mummifies the body. So all the mummies that we know, they were covered in salt, and they create eternity. So that's why you become neteru, which is nitrium, so salt. So sodium will be related to preservation of eternity. It's going to be related to divinity. So this created the idea that if salt is preserving life after death, if it's preserving divinity, so it means makes everything eternal. So this divinity, this eternity, has to have a weight, a divine weight in this world. So the weight of salt equals the value or the power of something. So it also, we also use salt to preserve food. So fish, meat, whatever, it preserve it for a long time. So to preserve life or to preserve food, then you needed to preserve everything in salt and sometimes in honey, but that's another story. So that made salt into the bearer of life, because from now on I cannot eat if I don't have salt. That's why when someone used to work, you give a package of salt. In Latin we call that salarium, salary. the value of things, it has its weight in salt. Salt is not only sodium. Salt is actually the mix of two terrible poisons. So sodium, which is an explosive poison, which it blows if it touches the water. And the other one is chloride, which is another poison that can kill us, that it's even used in weapons, chemical weapons. So one explodes, the other one kills. This one destroys things, and this one corrodes things. But when these two poisons exchange only one electron, they create stability and harmony, and we call that salt. So these two terrible poisons, when they touch each other and they connect to one another, they create the tool that preserves life. It's very weird. This is what in alchemy we call to turn a poison into medicine. So nature does it all the time. So we have to absorb that energy in a way that that doesn't destroy us, with the water of the sea, with food. So when we have it inside, the system separates the sodium in tiny, tiny pieces, so it explodes inside of us. So these explosions of sodium inside of us is what allows the conductivity, the electrical conductivity in our brain. So thanks to the sodium is how we can think, is how neurons can explode to one another and exchange energy. So sodium explodes. So sodium explodes that energy, and then potassium calibrates that energy. And that's what creates electrical conductivity. So without sodium, there's no inner explosion, therefore there's no thoughts, no memory, no idea. So sodium is not just about preservation of life, but it's also about exploding, so life can keep moving in thoughts. So that's when we understand how this poison that can kill us and make us explode actually can create our thoughts, our ideas, our way of thinking. So this thing that we said before about value of things. So in ancient times, if you have to preserve something for eternity because it's divine, you can also preserve an idea, a law, something that you want to keep for a long time. So ancient ones used to do something called the pact of salt, or the covenant of salt. And the covenant of salt is basically everyone that is involved eats a little bit of salt from the same bread or the same salt, and you share that while you say it. So you create a pact for eternity. So this pact of salt was something that was very useful in the mines of salt in human history, or places where there's a lot of salt. So what humans used to do was to get close to places with a lot of salt, so they could have more power, more salarium, more value, and more eternity. If we break a pact of salt, a covenant of salt, then you created a trauma that will last for a long time, almost eternity, let's say. So, so today we exchange that for money in different ways, or contracts that you have to sign. But usually you sign a contract or you exchange money in a dinner or a lunch. Like most of people get together to eat, to exchange salt chemically, and then you sign the paper. Isn't it? It's like something that it's a ritual that we have very common. So now we go to the spiritual aspect of sodium. So if you get together sodium and chloride, what happens is that creates a cube. Yeah? Everyone knows the salt cube. So this cube of salt is the one that will receive the rays of light and refract it into the colors of the rainbow. So this makes that the cube of salt is the closest thing that we all have to something called Metatron. So what does Metatron means? In Greek, a throne beyond. A throne that is eternal, that goes beyond time and space. So basically a throne of salt. Divine throne. So this means that we have access to Metatron through salt. And it's salt, the one that connects us to the infinite power of the Creator. And how a creation starts, usually something explodes. So basically, Metatron here represents the explosion of life and destruction to preserve the structure. So that's sodium. So that's Metatron. So that's why when we speak about Metatron, we speak about the eternal, which is Neteru. And that's why we translate it into sodium and salt. So for something new to be created, sodium will have to find a different way, but for that it needs to explode to create a new structure. So that reminds us that every explosion that we have, every war, every conflict, is basically sodium trying to reorganize itself. So it's the infinite potential of the divine trying to shape it in a different way. The only thing that happens is that in different scales we see it in different ways. Of course, an explosion of sodium in our brain, in our neurons, it makes us have an idea. We're like, oh, yeah, I get it. That is an explosion. An explosion in a war represents the same. But for us, it's in the same level, so we are affected by it. So from our point of view, a supernova, when it explodes, is terrible, but from our point of view, it's like a beautiful constellation. Not the destruction of thousands of planets. It's perspective. So it's all about perspective. So throughout thousands of years in history, every conflict is actually tiny transformations to exchange something new. It's like if every country is a neuron. Oh, those who were in the trip in Turkey, I sat everyone in front of in Istanbul, so you see all the boats crossing. So when you see a map, you will see that the Asian part of Istanbul and the European part of Istanbul, they look like dendrites, which is the connections of the neurons. So they don't touch, but they are like this. And the boats represents sodium and potassium, positive charge, negative charge, and exchange the information. They cannot touch, but they generate electricity. Without sodium or potassium, there's no rails to bring the information to the dendrites. This happens everywhere. So wherever you see boats that are bringing charges or materials or stuff like that, is basically that. We do the same as we exchange with people. Emotions, words, and sometimes we have to explode. So one of the things that I have been connecting with for a long time, it's been that we have been disconnected from the real power of salt, and we have to recreate a new one. But for that we have to go to the very first pacts, covenants of that information of the salt. And which ones are the codes that determine our covenants of salt for today, our reality today. And one of those pacts that is broken is when salt breaks itself and separates again between sodium and chloride. Suddenly they turn to become again two poisons. And this we have in all history. So we have to think about those two poisons and how they are controlling our life. Are we being destroyed, consumed by chloride, or are we being exploded by sodium? So we get out for a moment from the chemical and we go to the emotional and mind, so we can relate it to ourselves. We have a chloride and a sodium in our life that we call mom and dad. There are two poisons. There are two poisons that when they get together, they create life. But if they are not in stability, it creates again poison. If they separate, it gets poison. If there is stability between the two of them, I have preservation of life within my brain. If there's no stability, what I see is how they poison my life. If someone relates to this, it's not my fault. So I find myself trying to repeat the link, the bond between those two chemical elements throughout my life. Like, how can I bring back the chloride and the sodium together so I find stability? So I try to find it in partners, in friends, in family, in whatever. But it's always the same poison that we are trying to preserve. That's the most close that we have. But then we have another one, which is political, right and left. There are chloride and sodium. So there are two poisons. It doesn't matter which one you choose. The only way to create salt is by combining and finding stability. And this reminds us of all history, like rich people, poor people, and empire with kingdoms, light and darkness. A lot of light is also poison. So in order to see the colors, I need light and dark exchanging to find balance. So one of the biggest tasks of the alchemist is how do you get these two to find an agreement, to find that link to create salt. And that's what we call the covenant of salt. So I will try to make an example, a physical example of what is a pact of salt in a cosmical level. So imagine, let's go to the very origin of this. Imagine that I am chloride and in the other side I have sodium. So imagine that I am destroying reality as there's someone else that is exploding all the time. So, Mel, can you be sodium and explode? I need your example. Okay. As usual. Okay. So I destroy reality, chloride, and she makes it blow, destroy. Okay. So in order for me to find stability and her to find stability, she needs to calibrate her mind, and I have to calibrate my heart. Yeah, because I am corroding reality. So she's creating explosions in the mind, and I am like corroding the blood of reality. Okay, so I have to calibrate my heart. She has to calibrate the mind. I don't have a mind, but she doesn't have a heart. Usually
Not
happens.
true.
Not true story.
Not a true story.
No. So I need to exchange an electron to create a bond, okay? But we cannot see each other because everyone has to perceive another reality. So what do? We do this, and we create a bond. So in the universe, to create a bond, we have to spin and to find the axis and the balance. So she has a very short legs, so I am destabilizing her all the time. So she has to tell me, now, go slower because I cannot see that tree. But I have to move because I have no idea where that tree is. So she, with her mind, has to indicate to me, like, slower, and I, with my heart, has to say, I have to follow the rhythm until we find the right rhythm to create salt. That's the first covenant of salt of all history. Is the calibration of mind and heart through electrical currents. It's okay. Thank you. So we call this like, I don't know where I'm going. So the pact of salt represents, I always need someone to tell me where I'm going. But if the person says you have to go there, it doesn't mean that that person knows where they are. So with my heart, I have to indicate to that person where to go. So that's what generates the pact of salt, the covenant of salt all the time. Is the exchange of electrons, emotions, energy, ideas between one and another without knowing what the other is, without knowing where the other is looking at. So this is the first system of navigation of consciousness. So this is the first navigation system of consciousness, atomical in atoms, because one has the steering wheel knowing where to go, but the other one has the power to push it towards that direction. So you have to agree at what speed, in which direction. And you have to trust that the other one is spinning the right way and the other one is putting the right energy. And that's the first one that is atomic. This means that I will have to trust in the other one, which is my opposite. And that means that the one that has the steering wheel usually is the one that is far away from our reality. So imagine in a boat, like in old times, you have to put the coal to create the fire, but that person usually is always under and never sees the board of the boat. Has to trust that the captain knows where to go, as I am putting the energy flow. This basically is how consciousness is guiding the steering wheel, the boat, as the unconscious is putting the fire. Yeah? But of course, if I put too much fire and I'm going too fast, but the captain has no idea exactly where it's going, then you hit an iceberg and Titanic happens. So, have you heard the concept of the Ark of the Covenant? Yeah? Or Noah's Ark. It's all related to a boat. It's all related to the story of this navigation. Where am I going? So, the story here of this pact of the Ark of the Covenant, it was related to death. You cannot start to navigate consciousness if you don't accept that death is the first charge that you need. So in the ancient times they said death is the beginning of that navigation, because I have to leave myself away, which is I release an electron from myself so I can allow another one to put that its electron with me, so I can actually create the spinning. So an aspect of myself has to die so I can create the link. So a place of death is a place that generates all the covenants of salt. It's very simple. It's a place called the Dead Sea. What is the Dead Sea? Salt. It's one of the most important sources of salt that all humans use to exchange power throughout the planet. So all the people that usually surrounded the Dead Sea were the people that created all the covenants of salts. Therefore, the ones that originated from death, so they could preserve life. So this means that for 12,000 years, not only 5,000 years, for 12,000 years, every human had put value in thoughts because of the exchange of that salt. So this means that at one point in history, in the past 12,000 years, everyone had an ancestor that consumed salt from the Dead Sea to create a thought. So for thousands and thousands of years, we have been creating our world, inner world, throughout the salts of that place. So imagine how powerful a place that is full with potassium and full with sodium, because that's what it is. A lot of potassium, a lot of sodium, which means the exchange of electricity for the mind of the planet. So consciousness can be thought and created in that area. So these people that used to live there, which is not the ones that we know today, they disappeared throughout history, but they used to keep balance between time and space, sodium and potassium, to create a link between God. So what happened in the Middle East is that these cultures were dendrites. They were creating bridges between the gods in heaven and us on earth, so we could exchange information. But this emerged because of sodium and salt, sodium and potassium, not because of a god or anything. It was because of exchange of electricity. This exchange of electricity shapes the cells in a different way, and it changes what we call the Noah's Ark, which is the chromosome. So a chromosome starts to modify and creates information. So through thousands and thousands of years of repetition, our chromosome starts to change, the content of the boat starts to change, and suddenly we are encoded in information that we carry. So basically there is where the captains of the boat would turn the direction of time into one direction or the other. At the time that others created salt, potassium, sodium all together to put it in the boat. So some were destined to create a pathway, and the others to create the content. So the pact of salt is what happens inside the boat, as the other ones are redirecting the direction. So I was describing once that North Pole is like this steering wheel, and you have 12, like the clock, which is the constellations, And as you move the steering wheel, you move from one story to another. So whoever controls the north controls the system of navigation of the entire planet. But those who are under, not above, are the ones that put the contents of the fire. So how do we relate this? So there is a dot. We were talking about dot being or sodium or chloride. Who is the dot in the system? There's a dot that there's a code, which is the gene R1A. That is the code that has the dot, who is the one that points at the right direction or the wrong direction. And it's a code that is in the Scandinavians, in Saxon, and also in India. The two directions where this boat from Middle East was directing. I think you can relate to the Aryan race. So that's the gene of the Aryan race. So it's a gene that is not for blonde people or anything like that. It's a gene that is related to the dot, and that comes from Iran and goes directly to India and Scandinavia. It's the gene of direction. And all the Aryan people had a symbol. And all of them had a symbol which was the steering wheel of the boat. Have you noticed the Indian flag? You notice that the Indian flag has a kind of a steering wheel in the center. So the other symbol in the north of India is swastika. Look, where are you sitting? Do you see it?
Yeah. See.
This is a swastika. It spins. The camera is in the middle. That one, that symbol, complements with the other one that is in the other direction. One represents the south, the other one represents the north. If you only take one direction of them, it creates poison. It doesn't create a spin, it just creates poison. So if you choose one of them, it creates explosion or corrosion, chloride or sodium. There's no combination, there's no life in the center. That was the gene for the father tradition. And then we have mom. Who is mom? The Hebrew tradition. So the Hebrew tradition, they discover how to create the covenant of salt. And so the feminine side of the story, which was the Hebrew, were the ones that discover how to use the energy in the middle of the planet. So create the other side of the story. When they both were together in the center, it was creation of divinity. So they downloaded consciousness, agriculture, writing system, all of that. When they separate, poison started to be created. So we started to be trapped in all those poisons. It's a poison that has more than 6,000 years. It's not something from 50 years ago. So it's not related to cultures or religion. It's related to chemistry or the location of people in parts of the planet. It's biology. Imagine in this way: the Star of David is the fire that lights the engine, Metatron, salt, and the steering wheel, the direction, is a swastika that can be either from the Germans a few years ago or from the Buddhists. So the symbol doesn't have a value by itself. It's just a poison if I don't combine it correctly with its other. So what happens if they don't connect correctly? Well, they destroy one another. So what happened here in the system? If the one that is handling the boat and the engineer in the engine, they fight with one another, we all in the boat sink. So try to go beyond to the origin of that conflict that you see in humanity today, and go to sodium and chloride instead of cultures and traditions or religions. Go beyond that. So to create a shift of consciousness, you have to do something to actually change the current of that consciousness. So if we're talking about a boat, boats move because of currents or winds. So wind is related to the ocean currents. The mix of cold and hot creates speed. And that speed generates that the boat goes faster. But for that we have to create a correct current for that information to move. And when we talk about this story, we usually go to the northern hemisphere. So when we talk about the navigation system of the world, who controls the northernmost navigation system in human history is the Vikings. So Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland is where the navigation system of the planet is locked. So the August 12th there is an eclipse in Iceland that pretends to correct this system of navigation. But if the boat doesn't have the right current, there is no right direction. Where does the current that generates the navigation system of Iceland starts? In a very concrete place. Miami. So why does life is allowed by weather in Scandinavia and Iceland? It's because of the current of the Gulf. From Mexico, the waters crossing between Florida and Cuba, and from there they hit the waters of Bahamas, they touch Miami, and from there it hits directly to Iceland. Wow. So the current of the Gulf is the one that allows the navigation system of the Vikings. Wow. So even if I don't like to come here, so this heat, even if I don't like to come here, this heat is the one that allows that waters, those navigations. So the intention is to come to the boat. And from here to correct a little bit the current. We are here in the steering wheel.
Oh, wow.
And on the other side, what is that? The other side is the Holocaust. Huh? So it's the hand of God bringing death to the skies. Huh? So what I propose here is to create a covenant of salt.
Okay.
We have a hand pointing to the sky. We have death in the floor. We don't have to sacrifice anyone. And from there to create softly with our minds a current of consciousness towards Iceland that we are going to harvest August 12th.
Sounds good.
So we take consciousness about this story in the steering wheel and we go now to the fire, to the church. From the fire we create a covenant. How? I don't know. So I will ask for you to think, to have in mind who is more present in your life, mom or dad. So I don't care if it's a good relationship or a bad relationship, but who is more present? Because maybe we have a very bad relationship and that's why it's more present. So present it doesn't mean to be in a good way. It means just to be there. So from there, whether you are more with your dad or with your mom, so you're going to represent sodium or chloride. And the covenant is the one that creates salt. It's a pact of two poisons to create medicine. Yeah? From this position, which is us, to this position, which is there.
Perfect.
And that's why Miami.
Nos preguntábamos por qué Miami.